We Energizers have a high level of energy and we're naturally, and then I'm an entrepreneur on top of that. So I can believe I can go over mountains and around mountains and under mountains. And, I live my life that way. Right. So it's fine when you're with an Energizer, and it's probably fine when you're with a collaborator, another one of the profiles. It's not fine when you're with an exemplar. It's not fine when you're with a harmonizer. So sometimes we have to match the energy of the others around us.
Hi, I'm Tracy Lovejoy.
And I'm Shannon Lucas. We are the co-CEOs of Catalyst Constellations, which is dedicated to empowering Catalyst to create bold, powerful change in the world.
This is our podcast, Move Fast, Break Shit, Burn Out, where we speak with Catalyst executives about ways to successfully lead transformation in large organizations.
And today, I'm thrilled to have time with Theresa Caragol. Welcome, Theresa.
Thank you. Thanks for having me today.
I'm excited for the conversation. For our audience, Theresa is the founder and CEO of AchieveUnite, Inc. She's a visionary leader with over 20 years of experience in global partnerships and strategic alliances valued at $500 million plus. She's driven growth across 50 different countries through innovative collaboration. She's passionate about empowering leaders through growth, trust, and collaboration. With expertise in leadership development, emotional intelligence, and partnerships, Theresa has trained thousands in leadership channel and partnering best practices. She also designs programs for companies, associations, and universities. She's a sought-after speaker and the author of Partnering Success, the Force Multiplier to Achieve Exponential Growth, which was an Amazon #1 release and bestseller in 20 categories. She has held executive roles at Extreme Networks, Sienna, and Nortel. I'm excited to have you here. So that's the high-level version, and people can check you out on LinkedIn. But I would love to hear about your catalytic journey, maybe sharing a few career highlights that you're proud of that help us see your catalytic nature.
Well, my catalytic journey is founded in two areas. One is the power of partnerships. I started early on, probably in my early 20s, loving this whole concept of channels and partners, and I wanted to be an expert in it. And I can remember opening a magazine that had all these guys senior role, and I was like, I'm going to be one of those someday. And so that was the first one. And then the second one was I went through and then got to lead a total of 12 different acquisitions and integrations. And I had the privilege of leading 3 later in my career where we had to make 1 + 1 equal more than 2. And our company now does that as an offering because we got so good at it doing it inside of the organization. And, in M&A, right? If you can't get cultures aligned and teams aligned and partnerships aligned and the go-to-market aligned and the systems and the pricing and the products and all those things, nothing happens good. And we were really successful at that. And so I'm very proud of those times that I had the privilege of doing that as well.
Okay, so you picked up a magazine or something. How did you know about the world of partnerships? I mean, that's not a given
sort of a
thing.
thing in the tech industry. It's a big thing. And so, it's called the channel. And back 25, maybe even 30 years ago, it was just becoming a thing. And actually recently, last week, we just announced the acquisition of the first channel consulting firm in the world, who we just bought all of their intellectual property. So yeah, it has become a thing and now it's really a thing, but early on it wasn't as much.
Congratulations on that
Thank
acquisition.
you.
So I'd love to understand from you, in your own words, how you relate to the concept of being a catalyst, and also how that might support you being an executive.
Well, it's interesting. This book, Partnering Success, the Force Multiplier for Exponential Growth, it really is all about change, because if you're going to build partnerships and you're going to build growth, you have to have a catalyst for change. And we talk about what makes change happen and how do you make it stick and successful, and how do you get a partnering DNA. And that is something that I've studied for the last 30 years. I've led for the last 20 years. I've helped companies adopt. And so that's how we've sort of learned what works and what doesn't work. And yeah, we can get into lots of specifics around being a catalyst. I love that word.
Let's get into specifics in a minute, but I'm wondering if there was a moment where you realized that you had this catalytic nature that maybe other people around you didn't have, and what that moment was like for you.
Um, I realized early on I had a lot of energy and enthusiasm, and people would, say, "Oh my God, she has such a positive attitude," and those things. I don't know that I realized that it was the catalyst. I figured that out later when we um we have a psychometric index that measures trust. And there's 5 profiles of people, and it's very scientific. It's got very high validity and reliability. It was done with 3 universities. It took 3 years to build. Dot, 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 dot. Fast forward, there's 5 profiles, and one of them is an energizer. And the energizers are often these catalytics for change. And they are often very high trust builders and very high activators of others. And I think that's when I probably put that together. And honestly, that was only 4 years ago. So I don't know that I got this whole thing until recently.
Well, so building on that, then, as you were, doing the M&As and driving all of this change and new partnership approaches, and et cetera, what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced, which maybe you can now say as an energizer, or as a catalyst, and what most helped you in overcoming some of those challenges?
The people, and I didn't always understand to the degree of which the people have to come on the journey for change, and the degree to which trusted relationships helps people come on the journey for change, and by the way, that's the first of 3 elements of the system for partnering success is trusted business relationships. And I get that at a whole nother level now. I still techniques that were hard, really work on a regular basis. One being leaning into really hard, difficult, messy conversations and, being able to have them in a group and, respecting others while you have them and dot, dot, dot. There's so much tension that's high in these tough situations that you've got to build and keep trust high.
Is there an example of a time when that wasn't working for you that helped you realize that insight?
Oh my goodness. Oh yeah. I can remember a gentleman who I was going to have the job that we both had the job. And they had said that I was going to get the job and he was going to either be a report or do something different. And he looked at me and he said, "You know what? You like people around you that tell you what you want to hear. And you need people around you that tell you what you don't want to hear." And man, he was right. And that was probably 15 years ago. And I still remember that conversation. And, you have to seek out information you don't really want to hear sometimes and not be afraid of it.
Any other challenges being a catalyst, especially maybe in the M&A space? I mean, that cultural piece, the bringing the 2 cultures together is always a
The
challenge.
culture is really important. And then, the other thing that's really important, and we talk about this also in the book, is defining a joint North Star. It's not my North Star. It's not this North Star. It's something that gets everybody of both of the partner bases excited about what the new vision could be and what their role could be in the new vision. So the joint North Star is a technique. It's a vision. It's a strategy. It's something that we teach it in our programs, but that has really helped. And I watched it happen in action, and now I see it when people do it right. So that would probably be one of them. Yeah.
That's easier said than done. Do you have any advice for how to do that? I mean, especially if you're the acquiring company, my guess is that you have a strong vision about why you acquired that company and what the North Star should be.
Yeah, I mean, so I would say there's a couple of different pieces of advice. One is the degree to which we bring people along on the journey and creating the vision is often the degree to which we're successful 2 years later, right?
Yeah.
So how do you create the joint North Star if you don't already have it? Or maybe you have elements of it, but you want to have input along the way. So I'm a big fan of a joint SWOT. The strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities and threats. And then out of that often comes your ingredients for a North Star. I'm sure you've run workshops like this where you can help get that created. So that's one technique. Another technique is, the people coming along on the journey and feeling like they get communicated to, that people are transparent with them. Maybe they get to have a say, maybe they don't get to have a say, and we're transparent about that. I think the
Mm,
degree to which you can instill trust by being transparent and by being a strong communicator, and in these situations, over communicating. What we
mhm.
think is over communicating is actually not over communicating.
Totally.
One of the best integrations I went through, the CEO had a daily email that came out. It was every day during the integration for, I think, 6 months. And that integration ended up being very, very successful. And I thought that was a great strategy.
Yeah, the over communication can be really painful for us as catalysts. And there's a certain amount of emotional labor is a word that I use. It's a little bit charged, but it's like when you are the person who's leading the change and you're talking about bringing all of the other people along, it's incumbent on us, if we're driving the change, to make sure that we're doing that. How do you manage your energy when you're bringing all those stakeholders along?
Well, I think I still learn this. We Energizers have a high level of energy, and we're naturally, and then I'm an entrepreneur on top of that. So I can believe I can go over mountains and around mountains and under mountains. And, I live my life that way. Right. So it's fine when you're with an Energizer, and it's probably fine when you're with a collaborator, another one of the profiles. It's not fine when you're with an exemplar. It's not fine when you're with a harmonizer. So sometimes we have to match the energy of the others around us.
Mm-hmm.
And now, we actually do PQI and trust building in M&A situations, in change situations. And it's so fun because people are getting ready to go through change, learn the language of trust building. And then they're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, that's your exemplar coming out. Oh, look, Energizer. Hey, can you tone it down a little bit? Because we exemplars have this, or we harmonizers want this. And I think giving ourselves permission and a language to talk about these kinds of things is really, it's a propeller for change.
So spot on. We talk about like having an intentional network map and paying
Yeah.
attention to the equivalents of those different personalities, and like being really
Hmm.
intentional about when you're going to engage them, how you're going to engage them, because
Absolutely.
it helps us manage our energy better. I want to go back to something that you talked about earlier too, which is the ability to have the difficult conversations or be comfortable with the uncomfortable conversations. Not
Hmm.
all catalysts are people pleasers per se,
Yeah.
but there's this tension of bringing people along. And a lot of us think bringing people along is like being nice and making them feel, all of these things. Do you have specific advice for, catalysts about how to lean into the difficult conversations in a way that helps them, but also gets productive outcomes?
I do. And it's actually in the book, and it is a difficult conversations template, and it
Nice.
helps you prepare for the conversation. And I think the degree to which we prepare for the conversation, we know what outcome we want in the conversation. We know where the people or person, or where they might be in the continuum of receiving the conversation. I
Mhm.
think those things are really important to what the outcome that we get in the conversation is. And then my other guiding principle is, you know, if you have something to say it to the person, not when the person isn't in the room, and I think it's hard for all of us, but that is a very, very important part of a high performing team. It's a very important part of leading change. It's a very important part of trust building. And so, I think that one is, and none of us get it right all the time. I still don't always get it right, but really being conscious of it is
Totally.
important.
And one of the things that I've learned over the years, and when we work with people, is creating a feedback culture where you're also sometimes asking for the feedback. So you're modeling
Hmm.
like, hey, I'm not just willing to share it when
Hmm.
I see it, but
Hmm.
creating that vulnerable space.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I'm being willing to receive it, even, not always wanting the good things from my friend 15 years ago to being able to hear the hard things all the time.
That's right. Totally.
Yeah,
This
absolutely.
may be a segue into that, although it doesn't have to be, which, so sometimes as catalysts, we can be called troublemakers or disruptors. And while we may wear these with a badge of honor, they can also point to behaviors that we can exhibit that, other people can be limiting for us in a professional environment. I'm wondering what you've learned about how to be and regarding being a catalyst and making it to the upper echelons of being an executive, because certainly like the higher and higher we get, the more those things could potentially sort of hold us back.
Right. I look at the best leaders who are great at people who want to follow them, and part of that is, I think, the old ways of leadership and the new ways of leadership where you instill trust and you are genuine and authentic and you are a catalyst for change. I think sometimes those things are oxymorons, and the people who are able to do both, we're doing change and we're doing it with empathy and we're doing it with, that's a hard mix. It's almost yin and yang sometimes. Yeah.
Such a good point.
Mhm.
Okay, final question. Favorite catalyst that inspires you, past or present, and why?
I have 3 mentors who are actually, this book is dedicated to these 3 people, and I'll
Nice.
just share. I have some other mentors who are my favorites from when I was younger, but Bob O'Malley, he is a catalyst for change. He has the power and the ability to see something 2 or 3 years before it happens, and then connect and build a framework around that. And we've done that a lot with Bob over the years. He's been a wonderful godfather to AchieveUnite, and he's taught us so much. And so he's definitely a catalyst. And he was a 6-time CEO. He always built and believed in partnership. So there's something to be said about that as well.
Thanks.
Ron Rohner, the one I told you about, the first channel consulting firm, the godfather of the channel, he is a catalyst for change in that he was a data, just absorbed, needed, found, gathered, drove change, but it was always, always, always using data. And so he, to me, is just an amazing role model of change and depth, change and data, change and information, change and how to do it, and the dangers of not doing it if you don't have the right information. So that would be another lesson. And then the third one is my mentor, Karen. Karen Slatford is one of the first women on corporate boards in the UK. She's an incredible leader. She ran worldwide sales and marketing for Carly Fiorina at HP. And she is just she has this amazing ability to connect where people are in a company and where they need to be. And then big steps, big things, 1 or 2 big things that they can do to get there, and then rally everybody around those. And, she's done that for us. I've watched her do that for other companies and get them to an exit. She's just brilliant at that. So yeah, all 3 of them have taught me lessons, and they're all different.
Those are amazing lessons, and what great mentors to have. Any
Mm-hmm.
final wisdom to share with our listeners?
I guess I'll maybe 3 final wisdom. One is my mom's mom said, life is all in your attitude. So, your attitude dictates your choices, it dictates your happiness, it dictates your life. So I would say that is one. And going through change, it requires you to get up in the morning and, put your big girl pants on and really focus on being that change leader and being one of the people that others can see leaning into the change. My second piece of advice is, I learned from Gail Bridges' transition model, and that not all of us absorb change differently. So absorb change the same way. So where are we in the change curve? And I love that model, and I love understanding and taking the time to understand where someone is, because if you're trying to change them and they're all the way back at being angry and not believing it, you're not going to move them at all. So it's another way to look at your trust lens, but I think it's a really great way to think about, where someone is on the journey. And before we try to accelerate that, we have to figure out if that's even possible. So that's number 2. And then number 3 is, my other grandma, said, the more love you give, the more love you have to give. And it's an emotion that is infinite and can keep on going and keep on going. And so, the degree to which we can do this with kindness and help and in service of others is really, really important.
Amen. What a beautiful place to stop. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's such a fun conversation. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's great. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And thanks so much to our listening audience. If you'd like to learn more about how to create bold, powerful change in the world, be sure to check out our book, Move Fast, Break Shit, Burn Out, or go to our website at catalystconstellations.com. Obviously, we will be putting a link in the show notes to the Partnering Success. And if you enjoyed this episode as much as I do, please take 10 seconds to rate it on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you have other catalysts in your life, hit the share button and send a link their way. Thanks again.